Hi, it's Marissa from BumblebeeApothecary.com. Today I'd like to show you how to make some sourdough hamburger buns. These hamburger buns are soft and chewy. They're so delicious. Once you try these, you're never going to go back to any other hamburger bun. They're easy to make, and since they're sourdough, you get all those benefits of those properly prepared fermented grains that allow them to be easier to digest and the nutrients more available. So let's jump right into the recipe and get started. So I'm going to start off by mixing half a cup of fresh, active sourdough starter into my mixing bowl. I fed this 3 times about 12 hours apart before I got ready to make this recipe. The consistency that you want your sourdough starter to be for this recipe is the consistency of a thick pancake batter. And for this particular time that I'm making these, I'm using my rye sourdough starter. It's a sourdough starter that I always feed with rye flour. And then whenever I'm going to make something with it, I use whatever flour I want. So when I got ready to make this recipe, I started with that rye starter and then I fed it with spelt. So the whole grain portion of this recipe is going to be spelt sourdough starter. And then the flour that I'm going to add to it is going to be some unbleached, non-enriched white flour, and that just gives it a wonderful lighter texture while still getting all those great whole grain benefits. You could of course use completely whole grain if you wanted to, but I like that nicer texture that I get when I add some white flour. I just make sure to get the non-enriched kind. Next to that sourdough starter, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of salt, about 3 tablespoons of honey. I do not enjoy measuring honey, so I always eyeball it. I just think that's easier for cleanup purposes. And then I'm going to add 3 cups of my white flour. This particular white flour that I'm using at this time is just a wheat flour. But in the past I have used a white spelt flour and I actually really love that. I just don't have any on hand at the moment, so I'm using this instead. Next I'm going to add a little bit of water. I'm going to start off with half a cup of water, and I'm going to add more if I need to. And this just really depends on how wet or thick your sourdough starter is and what flour you're using, how thirsty it is, that kind of thing. So I'm going to wait and see what I need to do once I actually get it into the mixer and start mixing. So I'm going to do this in my KitchenAid with the dough hook on the slowest speed. I'm going to stop and just kind of scrape down the edges so that it gets evenly mixed. It is kind of on the dry side, so I think I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my water. So once the ingredients are all combined, you just want to knead it in the mixer for 2 to 3 minutes until it gets nice and stretchy. It'll still kind of have a bit of a sticky texture to it. Okay, that looks great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this rise overnight. You want to let it rise for at least 7 hours, and the reason for that is 7 is the ideal time for the phytic acid to be deactivated, for the grains to be more digestible and the nutrients more available. So that's always what I aim for whenever I'm making something with sourdough, is 7 hours at least. So overnight will provide that. We'll put a towel on and we're going to let that rest overnight. After the dough has sat out at room temperature overnight, it's time to shape it into the bun shapes. I do this by first dividing the dough into 6 equal portions, and then I shape them like this, kind of into a ball shape, pulling the sides down and tucking them all on the bottom. And then we're going to set them onto a baking sheet. I like this nice flat baking sheet lined with this baking liner That way it provides a nice surface for baking on. So I'm going to repeat that with all 6 of them. Once you've gotten them all shaped and on the baking sheet, it's time to let them rise a second time. This will take anywhere from 3 to 6 hours depending on the temperature in your home. If it's summertime and your home is pretty warm, it's going to go quicker. If it's wintertime and you have some more time, then you can let it go for the full 6 hours. You just want to keep an eye on them. Once they have at least doubled in size, tripled is even ideal, then they're going to be ready to bake. Once they're ready to bake, go ahead and preheat your oven to 375 degrees. And then I like to brush the tops of these with a milk and egg mixture and sprinkle some sesame seeds on top. It's optional, but I do think it makes them look really fancy. And then you want to go ahead and bake these for 30 minutes. Once they're done baking, you can take them off and let them cool on a cooling rack. And then once they're cool enough to touch, you can slice them open and fill with your favorite toppings. We love these for hamburgers, and you can also use them for sandwiches. They're absolutely delicious. They will take your homemade hamburgers up to the next level. These will keep out on your counter for several days, usually up to a week. And then if you want to keep them for longer term storage, you can put them in the freezer. I think it's so wonderful to know how to make your own food from scratch. It tastes so much better than anything you could buy at the store, and it's so much healthier for you too. Check the description box below for links on some of the different equipment that I use, as well as one of my favorite places to buy pantry staple items and organic groceries. I have other sourdough videos on my channel. I show you how to make your own sourdough starter from scratch. I show you how to make sourdough bread. I also have a sourdough pizza crust recipe. There will be links to those below, so be sure and check them out. Let me know, what is your favorite thing to make with sourdough at home? There will be a link below also to my blog post where there's a printable recipe card that you can grab if you want that. I also wanted to mention, if you're new, that over on my blog I have a member exclusive password protected subscriber library. It's where all of my free ebooks, checklists, printables, and everything like that are all in one spot. There will be a link below where you can get access to that if you're interested. Alright, I hope that you liked seeing how to make your own delicious and healthy sourdough hamburger buns at home. If you did like seeing this, give it a thumbs up. Share it with anybody else who you think might want to learn how to make their own sourdough hamburger buns. Here on my channel, I show you how to make nourishing recipes for nutrient-dense food, natural remedies, and DIY skincare and home products. So if those are something that you're interested in and you're new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I get out 2 videos every week. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.